resonating the same way. So when you suddenly have knowledge in your head that you know you didn't put there, it's because you're resonating at a frequency that allows you to receive it. Just like the radio here sitting on my desk. When I turn the tuner, I'm picking up the frequencies that are being broadcasted. They're out there. They're pumping out there right now. The radio is off. The tuner is maybe not to the frequency that I would pick them up. But as soon as I turn that radio on and start moving that dial, I'm picking up the frequencies that are being broadcasted in my direction. You're a receiver as well. And so when you are in, quote unquote, the zone, you're capable of tapping into the frequencies for that in the zone, for the zone that you've locked in on. And I say it all the time to my friends. When I'm working on houses, when it's time to do plumbing, I channel my inner plumber. I try to walk like a plumber, dress like a plumber, move like a plumber, because I want to resonate with the energy of a plumber and have that knowledge flow into me. Right? I'm lowering the barriers mentally from learning what I need to learn as a plumber by becoming as close as I can to that plumber and resonating and walking in that plumber's shoes, spiritual shoes. And so the ancients, I think, were masters at that. And aligning the structures to the stars was not only a way of indicating maybe where they're from, but it was to match what they thought the energies from the heavens. Yeah. It's the sole reason why when you go through the Bible, whenever there was a place where they thought resonated with the energy of God, they'd build a church on top of it. Because then you would resonate with that energy when you were in that structure. So Robert-bauval starts with that thinking and says, let's rewind the clock. Since this structure is built to mirror these stars, let's rewind the clock to a point where they were perfectly aligned. If the structures are near perfect in their construction, they would have most definitely have a precise alignment with the stars. Why would I think that? Because the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, and represents a replica of the earth in terms of its mass. That's not someone that's playing around when they're talking about construction. Because I know my house is not perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions. So there was a point to why they were doing those things. So when he looks at the Orion correlation theory regarding the Giza Pyramid complex, he started working on a program in the 1990s and assumed that the age of the pyramid is the same as the date of the closest distant star to the Orion-belt. And his goal was to match the pattern of the pyramids with the pattern of Orion's belt. And in doing that, the program spit out a date of the pyramids being aligned with Orion's belt of about 10,450 years ago. So if you are accepting some of what I'm throwing out here about the alignment, being consistent with the construction methodology of near perfection, then we're talking about a completion date of somewhere about 10,450 years ago, far exceeding the time that Jewish slaves would have been captive in Egypt. Okay, so we got two different ways of thinking about the pyramids and the pyramid complex and the Great Sphinx. And what those two markers are saying, they were already there. They predate the Egyptian civilizations. But let's look at the building techniques and tools. Christopher Dunn, another individual that you may have seen on all of the different channels that look at paranormal activity. He's a retired aerospace manufacturing engineer. So this guy's trained in looking at processes, tools, techniques for building precise equipment. And certainly in aerospace, you're not going to make many mistakes and keep your job. He's published dozens of articles on ancient technology, and his focus is looking at what it took to build the structures and what the structures may have been built to do. And when he, say for example, analyzes the statues of Ramses the second, what he figured out was that the left and the right sides of the face were precise mirror images of each other, as if the great Egyptians of the Old Kingdom had a CAD machine and basically let it carve out a complete duplicate. So if you flip the left and the right sides to the right side, or the left side to the right side, you get a complete 100% match. Now, you're not going to do that with a copper tool. And the cut marks that he saw in the stone, the bore marks where you're pulling out a core sample out of granite, you're not going to do that with a copper tool. You would burn through thousands of those to pull the types of core samples that were found in the complex. So where did they get the techniques to build when all the tools that you can find don't meet the task that they would be up to put a structure together like that? So that's his first argument, and I agree with him. And you see that represented not only at the Great Pyramid, but all over the world where you have these megalithic structures. The tools don't match the task. And certainly in this case, they don't match the task. The second thing that the current archaeological community argues is that all of that work was done so that you could have a burial site. Yeah, a graveyard. I'm not buying that. Never have. Never will. You won't be able to convince me. First of all, they haven't found any bodies in the Great Pyramid. They haven't found markings inside the king's chamber. They haven't been able to show how they would have even completed the work, because there's so little oxygen you would not have had torches, the light, to be able to perform the work that was needed. They don't even have the soot on the walls from them even attempting to try to use torches in those inside those chambers. So some of the evidence, circumstantial evidence, is just not even adding up at that level. So we're backing back from that, going, guys, it's looking more and more like that structure was already there, and became the object of renovation versus new building. At least that's the logical assumptions you have to make. The Egyptians could not have used copper tools, chisels, drills, or saws of that current date to build the pyramids or the Great Sphinx. But if they had, it certainly wouldn't have been built for a tomb. Christopher Dunn argues in his book, Giza Power Plant, and I'll put all of these links to both Schoch's and Bauval's work in the show notes so that you can go through and read these books just like I have and come to your own conclusions. But after I've gone through each of their books and stepped back from it, I'm convinced more than ever that, like Christopher Dunn says, the pyramid is a machine. It's a power plant. Now, he stops right there at his conclusion, basically saying that it's an energy generator and used to pump, basically opening up wireless electricity across the planet. And that the monuments, the obelisks that you see, the granite obelisks, represent takeout points. So that's his argument. And I do believe that. I do believe that that's one piece of the puzzle. And for those of you who have followed the podcast, you know I take a great leap from that and go down the rabbit hole and go, they didn't just try to make electricity for everybody. Because there are pyramids all over the planet. They weren't just making electricity so that they could power their coffee makers. These were great ancient thinkers. And so when you look at the alignment of those of the Great Pyramid complex, and you compare that to the pyramid of the moon and the sun, and by the way, the pyramid of the moon and the sun, when you look at it from above and look at how the streets are designed that connect the buildings, it looks just like a motherboard with the pyramids representing major components on the motherboard. Yeah, Dunn argues that the Great Pyramid was an acoustical device, that the crystal edifice created harmonic resonance that covered the entire earth and its vibrational energy and generated microwave radiation. I'm saying the fact that you have all of these other complexes on different parts of the planet, they had unique functions as well. If Giza was a power plant, then there were other quote unquote chips on the motherboard that had other functions. So where am I going? For those who've heard the podcast, you know exactly where I'm going. The ancients were part of a type 1 or type 2 civilization, and they turned the entire planet into a computer. Into a computer. And if you're following along in the Bible, it was at that point that they realized that man had to be separated, had to be downgraded, because what they were building, as they say in the Bible, would have put them on par with the folks that put them on the planet. And you're going, well, why would they use the planet as a computer? Because they were intelligent enough to know that everything the planet represents is clean, free energy. And then the harmonics allow them to tap into the knowledge. You see, I'm not like the rest